Show this Thursday, the 28th of August 2025. You are with me, Bill Clinton, standing in for Alan Hubbard this morning. My sign language interpreter is Esther Kendi. And of course, remember our channels of communication are officially open. 0111 980 is our SMS and WhatsApp number. We are also live across all social media platforms, and you can get our content as well at Science TV Kenya. And without a doubt, we want to take a look at some of the stories making headlines. Be sure to send in your thoughts and opinions with regards to our conversation this morning. And remember, as we are celebrating Katiba at 15, there are a lot of questions being raised. Be sure to comment. We would like to sample some of your opinions at the end of the program. And let's begin with our first story making headlines. Activist Boniface Mwangi has officially launched his 2027 presidential bid after years in activism and social mobilization. Mwangi, who made the announcement at Ufungamano House, which bears the hallmark of Kenya's struggle for good governance, says the decision to vie for the top seat is informed by the desire to change the status quo and deal with corruption. Let's take a look.
Down after July protests, and he said, "We're losing too many kids, and we've gone to too many funerals." And we realized there's one thing they can't do. They can't out-organize us. So we stopped agonizing, and now we are organizing to bring about a ballot revolution. Thing is hardly working in this country. A vast majority of us are struggling with the crippling high cost of living. Taxes are choking us to death, driving families deeper into poverty, and forcing businesses to close shop.
27, I will get the first chance to register as a voter and exercise my right to vote. My generation has shown they're ready to give our strength, our commitments, and even our lives to achieve the dream of a prosperous Kenya.
It is my hope, expectation, and dream that we are witnessing the birth or rebirth of a leadership of vision, of principle, people-centeredness. Remember Wanjiku, whom we don't talk much about today.
Why do we elect people who shoot our young people? Why do we elect people who shoot us?
Moving on swiftly, as Kenya marks 15 years since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, civil society groups have raised key concerns over what they describe as persistent failures in its implementation. According to civil rights organizations, key provisions, particularly those relating to the Bill of Rights and Governance, remain largely unfulfilled, with some sections having been significantly undermined. The groups argue that there is little cause for celebration, insisting that the true constitutionalism remains elusive. Take a look.
It's only 13% of Kenyans who are satisfied with the state of the nation, the way that the country is running, and over 87% are dissatisfied. And the country is basically run within the constitutional governance framework.
Devolution, one of the Constitution's most significant gains, has been systematically weakened through delayed and inadequate funding of counties, crippling essential services such as healthcare and education.
The Constitution must be rescued from political expediency and defended by the people.
The problem we have is its implementation. Why is the implementation a problem? Implementation is a problem because over the years, those who get into executive power think that they have gotten an opportunity to enrich themselves, and that is the underlying problem.
We see police brutality, we see abductions, we see disappearances, we see renditions, we see non-implementation of court orders.
On to matters health. Health Cabinet Secretary Aden Duale says some members of parliament own health facilities flagged in the recent SHA payment claims saga. Responding to lawmakers calling for his censure, Duale accused them of blackmail and attempts to derail the fight against corruption in the health sector. The lawmakers under the Kenya Moja, speaking in Parliament earlier on Wednesday, demanded that Duale take responsibility for payments made to non-existent hospitals, and the lawmakers further accused Duale, the SHA leadership, and influential figures from the State House of being behind the alleged fraud at the authority. Let's take a look at what that clip says.
Resignation of Honorable Aden Duale, the CS for Health, for number 1, conflict of interest, number 2, complacency, uncovered evidence of deep-rooted conflicts of interest. The government has now resorted to arbitrarily reject claims, punishing facilities that raise concerns about SHA.
Swiftly. Now, constitutional experts have said public participation remains one of the most overlooked aspects of the 2010 Constitution. According to the experts, Kenyans are still being left out of key legislative, policy, and decision-making processes. The standoff between the counties and the national government over revenue collection has also been flagged as a key stumbling block to fully realizing the promises of devolution. The debate on Kenya's governance model, calling for a referendum to review devolution and abolish remnants of the provincial administration during the 15th anniversary of the Constitution. Raila argued that the two-tier system of national and county governments has gaps that must be addressed, including reducing counties and abolishing the NGCDF. On his part, President William Ruto, however, insisted that fighting corruption across all arms of government is key to constitutional reform, and this was made during the 15th anniversary of the Constitution. Let's take a look on what the two principals had to say.
Devolution working as was envisaged by the framers of our Constitution? Is it then time for us to audit, review and evaluate the Constitution to see whether it is working or not working as intended by the framers of our Constitution?
I believe the time has come for the country to relook the whole issue of devolution. Kenya, in my view, is too tiny for 47 devolved units. I won't advocate for abolition of any county, but I believe we are ripe for a three-tier system that has county, regional, and national governments. We need a review of all the laws that create national institutions and funds for functions better performed by county governments. It is not right for the national government to jump the county government and create another unit below the county government where you call it NG. It is not necessary. Work through the county government, but let us take it to the people. Let us take it to a referendum and test if the people will accept it. Let us check if the people will accept that members of parliament can be oversighting and also implementing at the same time.
I, William Ruto, President of Kenya, fully support the rigorous and expeditious prosecution of any corruption case backed by evidence. But as Parliament performs oversight and demands accountability from others, it must also remain accountable to the people of Kenya.
Item: a move by the Council of Governors to oppose the transfer of close to 8,000 universal health coverage staff to county governments before the release of funds has drawn sharp criticism from the Nurses Union. Nurses Union Secretary General Seth Panyako has accused Tharaka Nithi Governor Muthomi Njuki of being insincere and obstruction of the transition of UHC workers to the devolved units and therefore called on the Health Cabinet Secretary on the Cabinet Health Secretary to proceed with the plan of onboarding the 8,000 universal health coverage staff. We get into the sports. We are looking at the headlines this morning, the newspaper headlines, and they are very interesting. And I would want to start with Daily Nation, which goes on to say, power games. Now the debate focuses on a number of counties and the new executive posts. And this is inclined to the Katiba 15, celebrating Katiba at 15 years this year, according to the new ascension by President William Ruto. And his father says the new bid to amend the Constitution. And on the headlines, it reads, on the 15th anniversary of the Constitution, politicians revived the campaign to amend the Charter, rekindling previous failed attempts, including one fronted by former government that was scaffolded by the Supreme Court. You can get this and other stories on page 10 of the Daily Nation. And another interesting particular piece on the Daily Nation reads, inside 1 billion budget to woo the US ahead of the polls. That is the 2027 2027 election polls. And it further says that there are lobbying taking place where latest disclosures by the US Department of Justice shows Kenyan leaders are increasingly engaging lobbyists to curry favor with President Donald Trump's administration ahead of presidential elections. Now, you can find more on these stories on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. And moving on to the Standard. The Standard has brought out clearly has touched on the matters on Katiba 15 and also the Shah scandal. And on the Shah scandal, it's talked about the untouchables. Now, it further says that Aden Duale has built a career thriving on controversy, and he is now presiding over a ministry marred in ghost hospitals and fraudulent payouts. The Social Health Authority chairman, Abdi Mohammed, is equally at the center of a multi-billion shilling scam, with MPs linking him to phantom facilities and shady payments. Together, the two epitomize a culture of impunity where public outrage never translates into accountability. Even as lawmakers demand their resignations, the duo stand insulated by proximity to power, unshaken and unrepentant. That is a bold statement by the Standard, and you can get more on that story on page 4 and 5 of the Standard this morning. And we have a quote there by Kitutu Chache South MP Anthony Kibagende, and the quote says, "We now demand the resignation of CS Aden Duale and the chairman of Shah." And it goes on to say, "We also want a commission of inquiry into Shah within 48 hours. If this is not done, we will call on all Kenyans to act." And it says this level of impunity and theft cannot go unchallenged. There is a very bold statement there from Kitutu Chache South MP Kibagende, and you can get more on that particular story on the Standard newspaper. Moving on to other interesting story here about former nominated senator, that is Oroba, and drama as police block Oroba making her way to the Senate to represent her reinstatement papers following a court ruling. It hit dead after a confrontation with the police, who dragged her away out of the premises. Now, you can get more on that story on page 15 of the newspaper Standard this morning. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are now switching focus to matters of sports, where yesterday we had action in the EFL Carabao Cup fixtures, and it was a disappointing result for Manchester United fans and Manchester United players generally, as they were knocked out of the competition after a 11-12 defeat after penalties against Grimsby FC. Now, the two teams, Grimsby and Manchester United, played a 2-2 full game, but then again proceeded to penalties, where Grimsby won by 12 11, had Everton playing Mansfield, and Everton managed to walk away with a 2-0 win against Mansfield Town. And also we had Brighton and playing against Oxford, where Brighton managed a 6-0 win against their counterpart, Oxford United. Recommit to national values. But beyond the symbolism, Katiba Day carries immense significance for persons with disabilities. It is a reminder that inclusion is not charity. It is a constitutional right enshrined in our laws. Now, the Constitution and the disability rights has clearly painted this particular picture. And the 2010 Constitution made a landmark commitments to persons with disabilities. Article 54 recognizes their right to dignity, accessible facilities, reasonable accommodation in workplaces, and representation in governance. The Constitution also demands that no more than 2/3 of elective and appointive bodies are occupied by one gender, opening pathways for wider inclusion of marginalized or underrepresented groups, including persons with disabilities. Katiba Day, therefore, becomes more than a date. It is a civic mirror that reflects how well Kenya is living up to these commitments. Now, what does Katiba really matters as far as inclusion is concerned? Or why does Katiba really matters as far as inclusion is concerned? 1, political voice. PWDs, or persons with disabilities, continue to face barriers in participating in leadership and governance. And Katiba Day provides an annual platform to spotlight these gaps in representation and advocate for policies that truly integrate persons with disabilities into decision-making spaces. 2, social awareness. Civic activities, both in schools and communities, on Katiba Day will help shape attitudes, and by educating young people about constitutional rights, we therefore break stereotypes and create a society that embraces persons with disabilities as equal citizens, not as dependents. 3, economic empowerment. The Constitution calls for equal opportunities in education, employment, and enterprise. Yet many persons with disabilities still struggle with unemployment, inaccessible infrastructure, and limited resources. Katiba Day should serve as a reminder for both the government and the private sector to collaborate and open doors for inclusive growth. 4, accountability and action. With government institutions, schools, and diplomatic missions mandated to participate in civic education on Katiba Day, this occasion can become a powerful platform for disability rights advocates to push for the implementation of inclusive policies and demand accountability. 5, a shared responsibility. Now, the Constitution gave us a framework for inclusion, but living up to it requires a collective responsibility. Therefore, Katiba Day is not just a celebration, it is a challenge. A challenge to move from paper rights to lived realities for persons with disabilities across Kenya. Now, as we celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Constitution, right now in 2025, let us now remember a democracy. Let us now remember that democracy is only as strong as its ability to include every citizen. On Katiba Day and beyond, may we commit to a Kenya where no one is left behind. Therefore, I would like to ask you where you are seated right now. How do you think that we can use Katiba Day to advance the rights of persons with disabilities in future, not only now, but then again create an inclusive and and bridge that communication gap or inclusion gap in our societies. Be sure to send in your thoughts and opinions, and we can share together, therefore, and turn constitutional promises into reality. That is the bone of contention and the elephant in the room I would like to address with you as we celebrate Katiba at 15, because with us here, we do have a really, really important and critical document. But then again, its implementation is that remains a challenge for us all, both on the government, the private sector, and we as a society generally. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying tuned this morning. I've been your host, Bill Clinton Odhiambo. My sign language interpreter has been Esther Kendi. And I want to wish you a good day today, and be sure to have that particular thought that I've shared with you. And be sure to feel free also to send in your thoughts and opinions through our social media platforms at Science TV Kenya. Be sure to catch up with our content as well. Like, subscribe, and share on our YouTube platforms, and catch up with all the latest information we'll be bringing you through from our studios right here on Science TV Kenya. Now, have a good day, and be sure to make a difference in society. Cheers.